Wonderful. Okay, so Vicar Eric is manning the helm for this particular Bible study, but we're going to do it collaboratively. So I'm going to turn over the hosting. I think I did.
Get it ready.
Did I? Okay. You got it? Yeah, you
Got
did.
it.
You are quick. Good morning.
Okay.
Good afternoon, by the way, Eric.
Hi, yeah. Hi.
There's Patsy. Hi, Patsy.
Yeah,
Hi,
yeah.
Patsy.
You know, the ID number that I punched in, they said it wasn't in existence, and I punched it in again, and it came through. I don't get it.
Well, sometimes it's a little quirky.
Oh, well, I keep trying, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to be late, yeah.
we're just getting started. In fact, Vicar Eric,
Okay.
it's over now.
Okay. We are in week 7, June 1st. It's June already. And we are doing our readings this week. Today we will do Genesis, which is the first creation story. Tomorrow, Psalm 8, Thursday, 2 Corinthians, and then Matthew on Friday, when Jesus says, go out and make disciples everywhere. So we will do Genesis today, which is a rather long reading, and I think we should read it. It's always good to hear this story. I think we probably hear it maybe once or twice a year. And I think we should read it. We could take turns.
I turned the light on.
It's rather long. I think there's about
Yeah.
7 slides.
Good idea.
So what I'll do is, Patsy, I know you like to read, and since you're not seeing
Yep.
what's on the screen, I could ask you to read Genesis 1,
Yeah.
1 through 5. Okay, 1 through 5.
Okay. 1 through 5.
And then
yeah.
we will ask for volunteers to just pick up the next. So each slide will be a different reader. We'll kind of do our own Day of Pentecost and hearing the word in many different tongues,
Yeah.
even though the same language.
Hey,
So,
Joyce.
Hey, Joyce.
Hi, Joyce.
so we will do that. So just when I turn the slide, after Patch is done with this first 5 verses,
Yeah.
first one to jump in, hopefully we can do it pretty clean. Just take it away.
Okay. In the beginning, can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formed and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day.
I'll read next. And God said, let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. So God made the dome and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. God called the dome sky, and there was evening and there was morning, the second day.
And God said, let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let the earth put forth vegetation, Plants yielding seed and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the third day.
And God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth." And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the fourth day.
Go, Dee.
And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky." So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, of every kind, with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening and there was morning, the fifth day.
And
And
God,
God said,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
and God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things and wild animals of the earth of every kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them.
God
And
blessed
God-
them, and
Yeah.
God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day.
Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, in all their multitude. And on the seventh day, God finished the work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day
Oh.
and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that he had done in creation.
Oh.
These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. The end. Well, not really the end, the
The end
beginning.
is
The
the end
beginning.
is the beginning.
No, we handled that reading very well. So testimony to everybody here. This is a lot, and I'll be upfront and honest, and I've asked Pastor to help out here. This was a lot to try to kind of put my arms around. And I just a couple things that I will say about this. You know, we kept on hearing, it is good, you know?
Mm.
So with God's word, he created everything by his word.
Yeah.
and the goodness of creation, God, the master craftsperson or craftsman,
Mm.
everything that he created, he stopped and he said, it is good.
Mm.
And that's great. And then God made the earth, and well, we don't really know how the earth kind of formed, but the way it was presented here, it's probably beyond explanation.
Yeah.
But it's in a special way because God created it, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's just amazing when everything was created, everything had a purpose. You know, the light in the sky, the water, the earth, the dry earth, all that springs forth, you know, living things like animals, people, vegetables, flowers, everything that just has a role in life here, that it's pretty special. And what I really appreciate is the seventh day, God said this was good, but he took a break,
Mm.
you know,
Mhm.
and we can talk probably a whole session just on Sabbath. But as I was driving home from the church yesterday afternoon, I drove by the mall on Middle Country Road. I
Mm.
saw an empty parking lot.
Yeah.
And I remembered when I was a kid in the 60s, stores weren't open on Sunday.
Yeah, so when you look at this story, you know, in the detail, you learn a lot about Near Eastern religion, the religion of the Mesopotamians or the Babylonians, the religion of the Egyptians, and also, of course, the religion of the Hebrews as it evolved. But in the pattern of creation itself, that itself is kind of interesting too, because you see it's very evolutionary in the way creatures come about, at least in Genesis chapter 1. You know, there's an order to creation, comes out of the sea, and then it shows up on dry land, and then eventually, of course, the ultimate part of creation. The ultimate part of creation is a creation of male and female, and that's very important. When you get to the second story of creation in Genesis 2, that has even more interesting theological implications, but we don't need to go there.
Mhm.
Yeah. But we're created in the image of God. We are created male and female. And in a sense, every human being has that characteristic, you might say. We have male and female characteristics. And of course, when you go biologically, well, then it becomes even more obvious. But when you look at human beings and their personalities and their makeup, their the way that they deal with life itself, male and female characteristics are there in everybody, to greater or lesser extent. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful, increase in number till the earth, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and every living creature that moves on the ground." You know? And then God provided seed-bearing fruits, fruit trees, and so on. It's interesting. The idea of having dominion or ruling is not exploit or destroy, but, you know, you are my stewards. You have the responsibility of taking care of this. And that's really where it does fit into the ecological way of thinking about life from a Christian perspective. It's right there in the beginning.
You know what I find interesting? That he says, "I give every green plant for food."
Mhm.
That he's not saying like that we should eat animals. Do you
I
know what
agree.
I'm saying?
I agree.
Like, were we supposed to just be eating the plants?
Yeah, the
Everything
deer
that has
like
the
to,
breath of, everything that has the
Yeah.
breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food.
yeah, the deer, they like to eat our plants the flowers that we grow. Even the deer find good stuff to eat.
So we evolved from a plant-eating species to a meat-eater eating one. Was that against God's plan?
Sounds like it.
But at the point where he's saying that about eating the plants, man wasn't created yet, right?
Yes, he did.
Now, this would be,
Yeah, because man, that's in verse 29, 30. Yeah, 30. And man was created in 26.
Okay.
Yeah. He's saying, and to all the beasts of the earth and the birds in the air and all creatures that move on earth and everything that has breath of life in it. And that's after he created man, yes.
and it was so. Yeah. Well, it's very clearly, a way that the Hebrew understanding of life came about. Eating of animals was, always subsidiary to the eating of plants and things that you grow that grow from the earth. And if you think about it, when you're eating plants and vegetation and so on, it's affirming your reliance upon God.
Right.
And that's very much a part of the theology of this. God provides those things for us in order to sustain us. The other part of the story that was very, very important to the Hebrews comes at the very end of this text. And it says that at the end of the sixth day, by the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. And that is important, a challenge to all of us, the idea of concept of Sabbath, we all have a hard time taking a Sabbath. And for the Hebrews and for the Jews even today, especially those who are more observant, the Sabbath is very, very holy. And they've come up with very elaborate rules and regulations about what is permissible and what is not permissible on the seventh day in order to keep it holy. We were on the ship, and with a lot of Jewish people. And on the Sabbath, beginning on Friday afternoon, the elevators on the ship were set up in such a way that they stopped on every floor, so you wouldn't have to do the work of pressing the button for a floor on the elevator or for a deck on the elevator.
That was considered work?
Yeah.
Push a button?
Yeah, in fact, they had an attendant, a ship's employee, there by the door from the area where we were towards the lobby to open the door for people so that they would not have to do the work of opening the door. Okay. Yeah.
So we know our former Secretary of the Synod, Pastor Shefflin. He's told us that when he was a young boy, his Jewish neighbors paid him a nickel to come in and put the gas on in the kitchen and turn it off Friday night.
On Fridays, wow.
Yep.
He's essential.
Now, when the rules become more important than the Sabbath itself, then it's probably excessive. But the idea of the Sabbath is that we need to take a break.
Mm.
We need to take a break. In fact, our bishop has been saying to pastors that we're supposed to take 2 days off every week in a row.
Mm.
And when I suggested Saturday and Sunday, they said, no, not those 2 days.
Mhm.
But it is a challenge. It is a challenge. You know, how do you rest? How do you avoid work?
And particularly now, you don't even get a rest because you're doing the Bible studies 4 days a week and hymn sing and worship, and
Mhm.
there is
Oh,
no break.
Joyce is doing
Yeah,
all the
but-
heavy lifting on the hymn sing.
Yeah, well, yeah, but.
Yeah, but
you know.
you do that to yourself by having, 4 Bible studies. I mean, you
Right.
can change it so that there is 2 Sabbath days off,
Yeah.
and that shouldn't that apply to your staff too?
No.
Oh, no. You're the only one who gets 2 days off, right?
It just depends
So
on.
the only way you can get 2 days off is if the staff works 7 days.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, the principle is a principle. That's true. Yeah,
How did they come up with Saturday as the Sabbath?
the 7th day.
How did they know which was the first day?
Wow, first day was Sunday. Look at the
Who
calendar.
determined that? Sunday.
That's a Google question.
Yeah.
Don't
mean,
the
I
Jews
know
have
all-
Saturday as a day? Don't they recognize Saturday as a Sabbath? The Jewish people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying.
Yes, because creation started on Sunday.
Well, here's another thing from this story to keep in mind, that day begins at sundown.
Yeah.
It was evening and it was morning the first day,
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
all right?
Oh,
So the day begins on Friday evening. The Sabbath begins on Friday evening and it ends on Saturday evening.
Mm.
I remember the first time I was in Israel, we were staying in the town of Tiberias, and we were in a hotel that was only a couple blocks away from the main part of town. And we came back from one of our field trips or whatever on Friday, and the whole town was dead. I mean, there was nothing. It was like abandoned. It was almost like New York City right now, before the riots. And
So sad.
but on Saturday night, after dinner, we went down to the main part of town, and it was bustling because Sabbath was over.
It was a.
Wow.
Yeah, very interesting.
Mm.
I often wondered, why is Tuesday the third day of the week? Because it is Tuesday.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, Donna, did that come from you?
That did not come from me.
That is me.
Yeah.
No, but Eric and I have a similar sense of humor, so.
That's what you want to call it. Yeah.
So
That's
do
what you
they
wanna
do
call it?
church? Is church done on Saturday though for the Jewish people?
Well, they gather.
Some kind of church. I don't know what it is, but
Synagogue.
They gather on Friday night.
on Friday night.
They gather on Friday night for Shabbat. That's what they call it. And they
Oh.
have their Sabbath prayers and so on. And then on Saturday morning, they come back together again for instruction.
Okay.
And so they use that day for instruction.
Mm.
But Friday night is for worship.
Oh.
So they go to the synagogue on Friday night
Yeah.
and then Saturday morning?
In some communities, yeah, they do. So like at our church, with our Jewish synagogue at the church, they have reserved Friday night at the church. They haven't been using it now for over a year,
Mm.
but that's the pattern. But every Jewish holiday begins at sundown.
Right.
The point there.
Yes.
So if even Hanukkah, with the lighting of the candles, they always light the first candle at sundown, and so on. It's interesting, but the idea of Sabbath is very important, and it actually extended into the agricultural culture of the Jewish people. They they would not allow animals to work on the Sabbath.
Oh, wow.
And they had a principle that after 6 years of farming a field, the 7th year you had to let it lie fallow. In other words, you couldn't plant anything in that field during the 7th year. The field had to
Froze.
be Sabbath.
Oh,
And
wow.
then after seven periods of 7 years, in other words, after 49 years, the 50th year was a whole year of Sabbath in terms of agriculture, and that was a Jubilee year.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's very interesting.
Hmm.
But for us, again, getting back to the question that Donna asked way back in the beginning, with Holy Trinity Sunday coming up, there is something going on there in the very beginning. Spirits moving over the water. God speaks, let there be light, and there's light, and so on. And then John, in his gospel, starts out by saying, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. The Word was God. And then later on he says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld his glory, glory as of the only Son of the Father, full of grace and truth. And that's referring, of course, to Jesus taking on flesh and blood. The Word that existed before the creation of the world. That's a very basic Christian idea. And our presiding bishop in their message for Sunday refers to that that as part of the meaning of the day. So for our contemporary setting, when do
How
we
does this relate to our contemporary setting? Where did we go through that already?
And that's a contemporary setting for us, yeah.
How about the last question? So what can we apply or take away from this text for us today?
Observe the Sabbath.
I was thinking the same thing.
Mm.
Creation is constantly renewing and being birthed again. Ongoing, never stops.
Right, that circle of life, right? You've got creation, then you've got the end, and then rebirth, and
Take care
I
of.
think what Linda was saying before about how everything's interconnected, and so specific, everyone has their work, like the birds, watching them do what their day. Everything's so interconnected, and we forget that sometimes.
I take creation as in the spring, where everything comes, you know, with the flowers bloom and the bird, you know.
right. Rebirth, right? You have the
Rebirth.
spring, and then you've got the fall when old age, and then the winter, death of winter, and then the spring again. Yeah. Yeah, I just think what Dee said about observing the Sabbath, and I think there, it's important for us to understand where we stand in the whole scheme of things here, and that we are a big part of this world, but we're not also, and that we can't forget that there's something so much greater than us that's really in control. As much as we try to control what's around us, we really don't have that control.
And I think that's what the pandemic has done to us.
Yeah.
It's made us to stop and think
Oh, yeah.
about life.
And what's necessary. I mean, look at all the stores closed and we're surviving, you know, it's,
Right.
Yeah,
Because we have so
unfortunately,
much technology
yeah.
yes.
in this life.
I mean, we're surviving, but we're lacking community,
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
you know, and our Zoom meetings and at least our technology is allowing us to be with people Well, we wouldn't normally now, you know. Imagine if we didn't have technology, how would we be doing things?
No, we,
Yeah.
well, they say the pandemic in was it with the flu, and influenza. I don't think that was as broadcast as it is now because they didn't have the technology that we have today.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, they talked about it. They had a paragraph. It's all I read about it, but the technology wasn't there.
It was 100 years ago.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you're right. It was 100 years ago.
You know, Dee, you were saying that we are surviving, right? There are people out there, though, that feel they aren't. They're really struggling.
Absolutely.
Survive.
No, right. You know, I'm thankful every day that I can get
Yeah.
on the phone and talk to somebody, or I can join a Zoom meeting and see people. And you know, but there's a lot of people out there that don't have that capability.
Yeah.
They've lost their jobs. They don't have the money,
Right.
the finances.
Lost jobs. They lost health care.
Yep, that's right. The health care.
They lost a lot.
Yeah.
I think one of the implications is that when the day comes that we're not in this pandemic again, then the work is going to really begin again.
Right.
Mm.
Yes.
That, you know, this pandemic is in its own way a kind of a Sabbath, but
Long Sabbath.
work will begin again. It's going to be important, especially as Joyce was talking about the interdependence. There are a lot of people who are going to need they're going to need support from people like us who may not be as severely hit by
Exactly.
you know, lockdown. That's going to be a challenge.
Right.
Mm.
It'll be easy for people who are not worried about survival to kind of ignore it. You know, ignore people that are struggling.
And some of us are fortunate, like being retired. My money's going right to the bank.
Yeah.
I'm not waiting for a salary.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
But there are people that they're not getting an income.
Right. If people that if they're working paycheck to paycheck,
Yeah.
so if they're not working, they're not getting anything.
Yeah.
They're not earning anything. You know.
You have to worry about whether the bank is open or closed.
Right.
Think about that. I mean, you know, it's how basic it is.
Ah,
Any other thoughts as we're on our 2:00 hour here? And we'll, yeah,
wow, that went quick.
that was, yeah, well,
Yep.
A lot of discussion.
Mhm.
Very good.
It was a good Bible study.
Yep.
Thank you.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
very nice, very good.
Okay, well, we will see you tomorrow at 1:00.
Yeah.
We have Psalm 68, no, I'm sorry, Psalm 8,
Psalm 8, yeah.
Psalm 8.
Psalm 8.
Mhm.
So we'll hear some more about praising God. And how majestic is your name in all the earth.
Mm.
So we'll continue, obviously, that discussion on God's great creation here tomorrow at 1:00. So bring a
Yeah.
friend. Make sure people who haven't been here can come back. So send out your reminders there and text, and
Mhm.
we'll
I
get
do
it done.
every day.
There you go.
They're probably getting tired of seeing my name.
That's all right.
Mhm.
Okay, so let us pray. God of heaven and earth, before the foundation of the universe and the beginning of time, you are the triune God, author of creation, eternal word of salvation, life-giving spirit of wisdom. Guide us to all truth by your spirit, that we may proclaim all that Christ has revealed and rejoice in the glory he shares with us. Glory and praise to you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, now and forever. Amen.
Amen.
And if you would just keep Paula in your prayers, that everything works out for her at the hospital with Sheila.
Okay.
and pray for the nation, for the peace to come back, and
Yes.
Right.
sanity
Yeah.
So scary.
Mhm.
to stop. Think about what you're doing.